Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasures in the last days. Indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, they cry out, and the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. You have lived on the earth in pleasure and luxury. You have fattened your hearts as in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you.
Rescue me, O Lord, from the waters of my sin. Rescue me, O God. Lord, I'm drowning within.
One thing that we don't need to read into this is that wealth is inherently bad. There are plenty of people throughout the Bible, Job, Abraham, plenty of people, David, Solomon, lots of godly people who God blessed and made them crazy rich. So the point is not the wealth, the point is something else. However, we have to understand that wealth cannot be where we place our hope. Ultimately, there's an issue in our hearts about where we're placing our hope. And James is saying here that people who chase after their wealth is not going to last. And whenever wealth is your main thing, you will do all kinds of sinful things to get it. And it's condemning people who, through their greedy practices, defraud other people, cheat people, abuse and misuse their power and their status and their authority. And those people, their wickedness is compounded through their richness. I've heard it said that money doesn't change you, it just amplifies what's already there. That's why so many people who win the lotto end up divorced and bankrupt and committing suicide, many of them, because the money allows them the opportunity to let their wickedness just run wild, where they couldn't afford to do that before. And while James is clearly addressing abuse of wealth and greed, and those are just symptoms of the real problem that plagues mankind. Right? It's one that's easily seen and examined specifically in those who are obsessed with material stuff. Not even necessarily riches, but just stuff. And that problem is the sin of idolatry. Right? Any time that we put anything else in creation as more important than God, we've made that thing to be God in our own hearts. That thing has become ultimate in our life. It is good and right for me as a husband and father to care for and provide for my family's material needs. But if I were to resort to stealing or fraud in order to provide for my family, I violate God's law. I make the choice that my family's need and comfort, or even their well-being, is of higher importance and greater value than God. In essence, I'm saying that His call for me to have integrity is not important, and that His promise to provide cannot be trusted. So I make my idea of what my family needs of greater importance than God, and I do whatever it takes to meet that idea. Right? And we do this in all kinds of ways. Right? We toss aside God's design for relationships or for sex because we've placed our desire for pleasure and that romantic in-love high, right, is more important than God. We cheat at school or at sports because we've placed our definition of success or of winning above God's call for us to be righteous. In James, he's addressing people who've placed their desires for wealth as the most important thing. See, the core problem with mankind is that we are broken. We are corrupt. We're made for a deep relationship with God, but our sinfulness gets in the way. And every time we choose some other desire, some other thing over God, we widen that gap between us and the joy and the peace and the satisfaction, which is what we're really seeking after, and which can only be found in God through Christ. We don't need new behavior. We need a new self. That new self was bought and paid for by Jesus Christ on the cross. Do not read this passage in James or hear what I'm saying and only think that the message is to not chase after or trust in material stuff. That's an issue you might need to work on, but the real point is the condition of your heart. Does God occupy first place in your priorities? The wickedness is not the greed or the abuse of wealth. It's not the unhealthy focus on material stuff to fulfill and satisfy you. That's just the symptom. Instead, consider this. Is your focus on material stuff a sign of a larger issue? What have you placed as God in your life? What's most important to you? Knowing the God who created you, who loves you, and who died on the cross to pay for your guilt in order to win you back to himself. Do you want your Creator, or do you just want his stuff?
Pour out your love, oh God. Send it down like rain. Pour out your grace and then let us all praise your name.